Good morning, my beauties and bees. Welcome to another episode of Cryptic Corner, where we explore the unexplained, the supernatural, the paranormal and hidden, the mysterious, the alien, the accursed, and the forbidden. I'm your host, Miss Bumblebee, and today we are going to start a fairy journey that's going to take over the next couple episodes. So I hope you're here for it. I have in the past covered plenty of fairy stuff, right? I've covered literal fairy videos where we looked at videos people have said that they captured fairies. Most of the time it's insects being captured at a different frame rate that's making them look bizarre in some way. We've covered gnomes recently. That was quite recently, actually. Gnomes are fun. We've what else have we covered? Let me see. I can type that right in here. So when it comes to fairies, yeah, the devil's fairy folk. That was on an episode of Creation Watch, so we hit that up. Yeah, fairies caught on camera, gnomes, goblins maybe. Nope. Yeah, the Hopkinsville goblins we covered. So we've covered a lot of little people and little folklore and stuff like that. And today's is no different. Gnomes get bonus on death saving throws, right? Yeah, gnomes. The gnomes we covered drive like little cars. They were weird. It was a weird experience these people reported. Pomberos, yeah. We did cover Pomberos, didn't we? No, we covered denim or whatever. The little people from South America with the red hats. Yeah, we've covered a lot of different stuff, and today we're digging into one that's especially special to me, and it's especially special to this idea of Native American little people. Because we're going to be talking about something that first came to my attention in my childhood. This was on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. And the creature, if you call it a creature, was called Pedro, or the San Pedro mummy. And the fun thing about that is that we had actually a physical mummy at one time. So you guys know I'm a sucker for someone in an Indiana Jones hat. It's like, oh, swoon. So we're going to watch the guy with the Indiana Jones hat talk about it.
Either this little thing in this display is a real-life fairy known as an Amerigar, or it's just disgustingly morbid.
Nameragar. That is our subject for today, by the way, the Nameragar and San Pedro Mountain Mummy.
Let's say you and your friends decide to go out into Yellowstone National Park for an afternoon hike, but you forgot it's winter, and the sun falls much faster than you and your friend had expected.
I do not tend to forget that it's winter when the sun goes down. It's just not something that happens to me. I bitch about how early the sun goes down all winter long, so you will not hear me forgetting about it. I will, if you ask me about the sunset in the winter, I will automatically start complaining to you. I know it's a cycle, but I can still complain about it. It's not really the sun's fault. It's the way we set up our clocks here on Earth that makes it annoying. If I didn't have to try to live my day by the new yeah, anyway. Oh, can you all not hear? Hold on. We're only 30 seconds in. I can cut that. Dang it. Why you gotta be like that? Here we go. He starts talking about the winter here.
Let's say you and your friends decide to go out into Yellowstone National Park for an afternoon hike, but you forgot it's winter, and the sun falls much faster than you and your friend had expected. You're making your way back to your car with nothing but the light from your phone to keep you on track. But then you hear a noise coming from just off the trail. At first, you write it off as a squirrel or some other little scampering thing, but then something odd seems to be happening. As you continue walking down the trail, the noises seem to be following you. For some reason, you think you're the main character of a story and decide to investigate what that noise is. And as you get closer, the noise goes quiet. There's no rustling, and you and your friend...
That's like a panic situation. Like, that's what they call that. It's named after Pan, like the god. It's supposed to be when he's playing his music that everything in the forest just goes silent. His music, humans can't hear it, but makes everything in the forest go completely quiet. And it's supposed to cause panic in the people who experience it, which is where the word panic comes from. Because you experience it in the wilderness, a sudden quiet disquiet, right? Yeah. Anyway, we'll continue.
Go silent as your hearing is heightened to its maximum ability. You begin to hear tiny little breaths, as though a toddler or an infant was breathing very heavily, and you turn to be greeted with a 2-foot-tall humanoid creature with jagged, pointy teeth, and is clearly looking for food. Do you A, give him some of your trail mix, B, make like a tree and leave, or C, trip your friend and get out of there as fast as you can, because the Namarigars are nothing like the Yunwi Junzi of Cherokee legend. The Namarigars are man-eaters and have targeted you and your buddy as their next feast for their tribe. You don't have to outrun the monster that's chasing you, just the slowest person in your group.
That's super cold, but probably true when you're dealing with man-eaters. They're 2 foot tall, though, and if there was only one of them and I had my friend with me, I think we would probably try to take it down. I don't think that we would run. I think that we would give it a go. That's like Chucky, right? I think I could take Chucky by myself. That's why Chucky, people talk about Chucky being a great slasher. He's got to sneak around and stuff because he gets wrecked if he doesn't. If he's not sneaky, he gets his ass kicked. The only time he's scariest when he has the person injured and then he's coming at him. So yeah, this story would have been much scarier if you like stepped in a bear trap or something first and you were wounded and then you saw that nasty little critter coming at you. But we'll see. Yeah, it's only 2 foot tall. You offered it the trail mix? But we were gonna split that. There's only no. That comes out of everybody's then. Okay, you didn't give him any of the raisins, did you? Because if you don't want your raisins, don't give them to the goblin because I want them. I know I'm weird. I like raisins. Sorry. All right.
I'm sorry.
So what do the Namarigars have to do with this little thing here? Well, this little guy has been known as the San Pedro Mountain Mummy. And we're going to get into this.
I always knew it is Pedro, though. And it's a lot smaller than what they described in that story there. Pedro is only 14 inches tall, so it's a little over a foot tall. That's about like that. Pedro was the size of a small infant. And keep that in mind, because it's going to come back later. Oh, hey, Wild World. Good to see ya. Have a good one. Yeah, I plan to. Yeah, I'm not punting little dude. I'm giving him snacks and making friends. They survive when you all get eaten. They're gonna share some brie brisket with you, Tsumami. She gave him the trail mix. Oh. Are you my mommy? Yo, mommy.
Little thing's origin, so that way you can understand why its existence alone should be a concern for anyone that goes out into the woods of Wyoming.
These guys looks like they look like they would enjoy shriveled grapes. I'm just saying, they really do. They look like they would enjoy some shriveled grapes. Of course, grapes aren't really native to the Rockies. There's stuff that they could have called grapes, though, that are similar. That's why the Vikings called... Well, that was more on the East Coast, because they called this Vinland, because the wineland, because they said there was grapevines everywhere. But there aren't really. Not here. Not naturally.
In the summer of 1943 in central Wyoming, 2 men were out looking for their share of wealth in the form of raw gold. They decided the best way to find their fortune is by blasting holes in the side of a mountain. So the
Ember, the woods of Wyoming, don't you know you just start from one corner, You make a diagonal across to the other corner. I'm doing this on my screen too. And then you go straight across the top to this corner. Back down to this corner. And then you, yeah. Because Montana's just a big square. And then you start filling it in. Yep. It's like, you'll figure it out. Woods of Montana can't be that big. It's in a box, right? Just everything inside that box. Just Montana. You know. It's no Alaska. It's no Texas. Raw gold, not the cooked variety. Exactly. Raw gold right off the vine.
2 men, Cecil Maine and Frank Carr, set a charge at the foot of the San Pedro Mountains. As they took cover and blasted a hole inside of the rocky terrain, it managed to reveal an underground cave, but it wasn't large like you would expect. It was rather small, but not too small that Cecil Maine couldn't crawl into it. So he makes his way into the tiny space until he found a rocky ledge that was about 2.5 feet off of the ground. And to their disappointment, there wasn't any gold in sight. However, he did see something else. It looked as though it were a small, yet very intelligent man sitting on a ledge with his eyes closed. His arms were crossed and his feet...
Why does he look intelligent for? He doesn't look intelligent to me. He doesn't look dumb either. He just looks kind of, I don't know. Without being able to see its eyes, I don't know. I have a hard time gauging intelligence, especially if its eyes are closed. I'd call it an anthropoid at least.
Feet were tucked underneath him. This little man's skin was dried by the arid Wyoming weather, and his mouth looked almost as if he were scolding the man for disturbing his resting place. After further examination, Maine had realized that this little man wasn't alive, and that he was around 6.5 inches tall while sitting.
Now that's a different size than we'll hear later, and we'll see when we look into this a little bit deeper. Cavers are nuts. I used to love caving. I grew up in Missouri. So yeah, we put on our waterproof suits and get our ropes out and yeah, and just descend down into pretty much any of the little caves around here that we could fit into all the way. Yeah, one time we found a vulture nest way back in there. Didn't realize vultures nested so far back into the caves like that, but they really do. I guess it keeps their babies safe, but yeah, Mama was ready to defend it. She threw up at us. It was pretty epic.
The little guy weighed about a pound, and while they would have much preferred a pound of gold, there was no denying that they had managed to stumble upon a treasure. Throughout the next couple years, somehow it managed to end up in the ownership of Homer F. Sherrill, and was then owned by Floyd Jones. He owned a drugstore in Meeteetse, Wyoming. Jones was selling postcards of the man to bring in a little bit of extra cash, and it managed to work. It became a bit of a sideshow attraction.
Okay, so 6 inches in the sitting position is what he means. So not like standing up. Standing up, it would have been 14 inches tall is the 14-inch estimate. I was getting some clarification on that. Yeah.
Later on, the San Pedro mummy found its way to Ivan Goodman, who was a car dealer in Casper, Wyoming, which wasn't too far from where the little man was found. He showed off the little guy as it sat atop a wooden base. Now later on, this little guy was x-rayed, and the images proved that this wasn't made in arts and crafts. The San Pedro mummy was real.
Well, taxidermy is still an arts and crafts, sweetie, so if someone crafted it together like this, and I'm not saying that's what this is, I think that this is infant burial, or was an infant burial, anencephaly. Well, I think when they say deformed, they're talking about the deformation on the skull, because its skull was crushed, so its skull was deformed, and I think, I'm being generous here, not that it was born, or did I, if I said deformed, yeah. I'm not trying to offend, sorry. Is Brie a goblin? She likes caves and raisins. Yeah. I do like raisins. What's wrong with raisins? I like dried fruit, just in general. Look, I don't get a lot of options in my diet. I don't have a lot of variety for me since I don't eat most meat. So... yeah, I do. I work with what I get.
It was real flesh and bone, and as far as they could tell, it was 100% authentic. But what exactly is it? Well, I'm getting to that. There's a scientific explanation as to why this person looks this way, but the story of its existence and disappearance isn't told yet. Ivan Goodman had featured the mummy in his car advertisements and even had a hype poster saying, "It's educational, it's scientific, it will amaze and thrill you. It's a pygmy preserved as it actually lived." The poster had the photos along with its x-rays.
Yeah, and pygmies are a very specific group of people that live in the Congo region, so in the Congo Basin. So it wouldn't be appropriate to call this a pygmy either, only in the very, very loosest of terminology. A dwarf population might be better. Yeah, a dwarf population of people. Not really, would it be insular dwarfism?
And had claimed that the little being was around 65 years old when it died. But the validity of this is going to come up later, and you're definitely going to want to know what the anthropology department of Harvard had to say about it. But one reason I've always loved this story of this little being is because we have pictures and x-rays, so we know this thing was real. We know that it existed at one point, and for some odd reason, the San Pedro mummy was misplaced. So one of two things is true. Either this little thing is a normal human with a rare disease, or this is a little person that we've heard of in Native American lore and legends. And if this was just a person, then
I just don't like the way its arms are distended. That it makes me uncomfortable. Is that weird? I know it's cross-armed and stuff, but like that's what gives it that adult look. Is that the forearms are so I don't know. Like their tendons and stuff are so stretched. Like there's no baby fat on it, right? But when a human body starts to break down, especially in a dry climate like that, it saps the moisture out of it, and that's mostly what the fat is. As fat cells are just the way our body stores extra moisture for us, right? So when your body starts to sap the moisture out of you, and you get started to desiccate, the first thing that goes is fat. So it's going to lose that chubby baby-like features on its arms and face very early on in the desiccation process.
then that would mean people have been displaying a sickly corpse, and now that corpse was just misplaced? How do you just lose a dead body, especially...
This reminds me of Alyoshanka. Remember when we covered Alyoshanka and I was like, so this lady finds this alien baby in the woods, right, and is taking care of it and stuff. And everybody's like, oh no, she's crazy. There's no baby. She's crazy. They call the cops to come get her, and the cops come and get her to lock her up in a mental ward. And there's the baby in the house. And they're like, oh no, we did not lock you up because there's no baby. Do you have somebody to take care of the baby while we lock you up? It was this really weird story. And then the baby disappeared. The baby died and then disappeared. So, and it's like, okay, that's Russian authorities just letting a baby just disappear. But wasn't much better in the U.S. when you could display a human corpse of an infant for years and years in your auto dealership.
Only one so unique as this. And if this is a creature of Shoshone legend, isn't it convenient that this little person has just disappeared? Either way, the San Pedro mummy's disappearance is incredibly suspicious. It vanished in 1950 and hasn't turned up since. There's rumors and pictures, but no guaranteed location. It's been 7 decades since it's been lost, and we still have no word of its reemergence. So what exactly could this be? Well, before we get into the folkloric possibility of what this could be, let's take a look at the assumption of what this is scientifically. Anencephaly is an extremely rare defect.
And you will see that a lot with these sovereign citizen videos and stuff. They do, the cops do tend to try to arrest people for resisting arrest. And it's like, that's not a thing you can do, officer. You have to have a primary offense first. But here, they're going to get into this.
And the formation of a baby's neural tube during its development. If a baby is tragically born with this defect, it may be stillborn or survive from just a few hours to a few days. This is what many people believe the San Pedro mummy to be, an infant with a rare birth defect. And while that's definitely a viable explanation, if this was an infant with a genetic defect, how was it hidden so deep within a mountain that the only way that these two men could have actually made their way to it was to blast a hole in the side of a mountain? And then is it really likely that a Native
brown people can't dig holes in the sides of mountains? It had to be fairies.
American man or woman would be willing to go through this difficult task of finding a small cave and then crawling through this with their deceased child, only to prop them up in a cross-legged, arm-folded position only to then leave the body in the cave, which, by the way, isn't too dissimilar to how the Shoshone bury their dead, but it leaves out a lot of what they actually do. The Shoshone custom is to wrap their dead in skins and then deposit them in caves or cliffs between rocks. They would also leave a generous amount of supplies and material for the journey into the unknown. However, since this is rumored to just have been a baby, and one with a defect at that, I'm not sure they would have done any of this at all. But the Shoshone wasn't the only people that once lived in Wyoming.
You're not sure? Well, if Indiana Jones isn't sure about it, maybe it's real, right? If he thinks that because the people that lived here buried their dead in this exact same way, and people have been burying their dead in this way since the Clovis people, literally the oldest person in the U.S. ever discovered is buried in this way in Montana and is a baby. And I'm not even kidding. Not even kidding. Check this out. So, this is Anzac 1. Anzac 1 is a Paleo-Indian male infant whose remains were found in south central Montana, United States in 1968 and dates from 13,000 to 12,850 years BP. The child was found with more than 115 tools made of stone and antler and dusted with red ochre, which is a common burial practice for everybody, for all humans. Red ochre was the way to bury people for quite some time. Most of the most of the Holocene, and probably most of the yeah. Anyway, where was I? Okay, so suggesting an honorary burial, Anzac 1 is the only human who has been discovered with the Clovis complex and is the first ancient Native American genome to be fully sequenced. Paleogenomics, let me start over. Paleogenomic analysis of the remains reveals Siberian ancestry and a close genetic relationship to modern Native Americans, including those of Central and South America. These findings support the hypothesis that modern Native Americans are descendant from Asian populations who crossed Beringia between 23,000 and 14,000 years ago. Anzac 1's discovery and subsequent analysis has been controversial. The remains were found on private land, so compliance with Native American Grave Protection and Reparation Act was not required in the study. However, some Native American tribal members in Montana felt they should have been consulted before the research undertook analysis of the infant's skeleton and genome. Montana state law does require consultation with Native Americans concerning deposition of ancient skeletal remains. After consultation, Anzac 1 was reburied on June 28th, 2014 in the Shield River Valley in an intertribal ceremony. The numerous Clovis artifacts associated with the first burial are curated at the Montana Historical Society in Helena, Montana. So yeah, there you go. Check that out. I slipped some freaking science in on you. Oh, didn't see that coming, did ya? Look at me teaching you all about early American paleontology when I tricked you into coming here to talk about little fairy gnomes.
Ian would place the body high above the ground because the belief was that it would accelerate the soul's passing into the afterlife. So the San Pedro Mountain mummy's location doesn't fit with their beliefs either. The Sioux, who had also lived there, practiced tree burials, much like many others. And the Crow people that lived in Wyoming had an entirely different ritual from their dead altogether. So even though it doesn't fit the Shoshone tradition hardly at all, it's the closest.
I'd never thought about that too much before, how the Native Americans populations would have been varied in the way that they treated their dead. A lot of them put them in caves and stuff, which is really interesting. And there's burials, of course, but there's also things like this where they expose them to the elements and let nature basically break them down. So you got scavengers and exposure and sunlight and rain and wind and snow, just breaking the bodies down up there on platform.
This thing we have to an explanation as to how it got there. But if it's something else, what do the legends of the Shoshone say about little people? The Shoshone people have legends about little people known as the Namerigar. And according to their stories, the Namerigar are very tiny people around 20 inches tall, or even as big as 3 feet tall. And also some of the natives called them little people eaters. And that isn't just for us either. It's said that if a member of Namerigar society was too sick to contribute, then they'd put an arrow in their head. And this is where things get weird. Before the internet, before the San Pedro mummy, before all of the things we talked about today, people suspected the existence of little people in North of America. And it wasn't in the 1900s or even 1800s, but all the way back into 1778 in the Centennial History of Coshocton County by William J. Balmer. There's some interesting things to be read about. We find that a missionary by the name of David Zeisberger believed that a certain burial ground contained the remains of a number of pygmies that were around 3 feet tall. And he goes further into detail as to what...
So this, we've seen this before too. Frontier Tales. Newspaper Frontier Tales. Recently we did the stream about the man-eating plants from Madagascar. That was based on one of these tales. Obviously a lot of the young Earth creation stuff, like Matt Powell's famous Civil War pterodactyl, Frontier Tales. There's stories of course, living dinosaurs. Stories that have later been molded into Sasquatch tales when they're about red-headed giants, lake monsters, cave monsters, all these things that are discovered, lost cities beneath the Grand Canyon, all are part of this Wild West fever dream that people had on the East Coast, and they were thirsty for the weird tales from beyond the Rocky Mountains, right? Or even from the Great Plains for a while, you know, or go back far enough from the Appalachians even. So yeah, always the weird West is what they were, what people were craving, and these writers were willing to give it to them.
Set. The long rows of graves of the pygmy race at Coshocton were regularly arranged with their heads to the west, a circumstance that these people were sun worshippers, facing the daily approach of the sun god over the eastern hills. Acceptance of the sun worship surmise does not necessarily imply a deduction that this pygmy race may have descended from the river people of Hindostan or Egypt. Primeval man, wherever found, seems to have been a sun worshipper. And while we don't...
So that's like a Victorian era glamorization of what they would have considered archaeology back then, the same type of archaeology which took all the Egyptian artifacts and stowed them away to London, put them in displays in museums. Same kind of big brain thought goes into that, what that gentleman just read. I'm not saying that's the guy, the host, our host's position here, just that to discover an infant graveyard or a children's graveyard of native people and just go to town with some folklore of your own about them, and then worshiping being pygmies that worship the sun, and they're what do you say, primitive humans. It sounds very much like you found a children's graveyard.
Don't have the remains of the burial grounds. It does raise the question of their existence, because while many may call into question the scientific probability that we have never encountered or seen these little people, it gets harder to debate with information put forward by the American Museum of Natural History and one of the world's most renowned schools. The American Museum of Natural History takes up about 2.5 million square feet, and to this day has been around for 154 years. It was established in 1869 and is no stranger to the odd, unusual, and unique, which is why they wanted to run some thorough tests on the San Pedro mummy to see whether or not it was one big hoax. And when they did, they found that it was 100% real.
Why does it hurt so much?
Because it was real.
And if this isn't enough to convince you, the anthropology department at Harvard State University certified that the tests performed by the museum were legit. They were certified genuine and true. The department also stated that the body was estimated to be around 65 years old as well. They saw that there was damage to the spine, a broken collarbone, and its skull was smashed in, which exposed a portion of the brain tissue and some congealed blood. This all pointed to the possibility that this little man had a rather violent death. But it gets even...
Well, the baby born with the disorder, maybe they tried to put it out of its what they considered its unfortunately miserable prospects of existence, right? Maybe the parents made that hard decision on whether or not they could take care of this obviously disabled child that was going to struggle. Parents had to make decisions like that all the time. That's why that's where the leaving the baby on the fire step thing come from, because people used to just leave them in the woods to die of exposure. That way nobody killed the baby, nobody murdered the baby. The baby got left in the woods on accident. And the baby got carried off into the woods. You don't know what happened. And then that way, no harm, no foul. Now we got like all this forensic stuff. Of course, it's easier to try to pin down who the abandoning mother is if they find a dead newborn in the wild. Of course, I'm not condoning that practice. I'm just saying that, you know, through most of modern history, that was a decision people made in the months leading up to the birth, was whether or not they were gonna try to raise that baby or not when it came out.
Even creepier when they examined the teeth. They claimed that this corpse had a full set of canine-like teeth, all of which were overly pointed.
Who claimed that? I can't find anything to support that. Canine-like teeth. Yeah, this is just colonizer talk about the remains of this. And I don't know that he might even be native, but that's still called the story he's telling is a colonizer's tale about this infant.
And what is the Namaragar known to have? Pointed and sharp teeth. However, the University of Wyoming had also examined the body and at one point claimed that it was an anencephalic infant. And because of the cranial deformity, it only gave the appearance that it was an adult. And if it truly was a deformed baby, why wasn't it ever given a proper burial? Why is it that the San Pedro mummy is just missing? How do you miss?
Why wasn't that a proper burial? It was they had to blast a hole in a mountainside to find it. I think that's the most proper burial you can. Hell, if you wanted to preserve somebody, I can't think of a better way than to put them in a freaking deep cave in Montana. That seems like the hot and dry cycles of winter and summer, especially if you start in the winter, if you put them in there in the winter, so that they get freeze dried first. Look at the mummies of the Atacama Desert that just form naturally. The reason Egypt does mummies so good is because the hot dry cycle that they have. Yeah. No, I unblocked you, blessed be. I'll after every show, I usually try to pull those back. Sometimes I don't know what you get blocked for, but if something happens, I'll have my moderators report it back to me so I know. Maya's pronouns are Her Majesty.
Place something like that. It's as if you had an urn with your mother's ashes and then you just lost it in your move across town. You don't misplace these types of things, and honestly, what is this thing? Could this be proof of the little people that Native Americans have been telling stories of really being out there? Could they still be walking the woods and forest, just out of reach of modern man? You tell me what you think down in the comments, and then check out...
No, they couldn't. No, they're not, and this mummy doesn't imply that either. But... this is the channel, by the way, and there's his, I guess that's his signal, is his Indiana Jones hat. He does other videos about stuff like, El Chupacabra, Mothman, the Van Meter Visitor, Wine Cask Full of Gold, Lost Treasures, oh, yeah, Beast of Bladenboro, that's one we haven't covered yet. More little people legends, so he does a lot of that. I guess he has to, in order to keep his channel up, maybe he has to give it this could still be real spin. I don't know. Yeah, and here we were. Yeah, this was the article on that, and there was part of this one I wanted to cover, not the whole thing though. Where's the other one? Okay.
Its present location is unknown, and an offer of $10,000 by an unknown person wanting to prove evolution wrong was not enough to make Pedro resurface. In the 1990s, another mummy with similar characteristics and in crossed legs position was discovered. It was a female mummy kept by a Native American family in the attic for several generations. This one was nicknamed Chiquita, and after
Nothing weird about that. Just yeah, we keep dead babies in the attic. Sure, why not?
After an examination by University of Wyoming anthropologist George Gill and DNA testing by the Denver Children's Hospital, it was determined to be another anencephalic infant that died in the 18th century. It was also determined that she was...
Sometimes I can't tell if the Y files, if he's putting on an act of incredulity, or if it's or if he's actually, because he'll sometimes some of the stuff he ends with, I'm pretty sure that it's been solidly debunked, and he's like, I'm not sure, maybe it is real. I have to think about which one it was that I watched fairly recently. I think it was Polybius, his video on Polybius. I'm like, no, Polybius was not a real thing. Polybius was the FBI doing gambling raids on arcades in the Seattle region in the 80s, seen through the eyes of 8 to 12-year-olds.
Despite having blonde hair of Native American origin. What I normally do in the footage analysis videos is extrapolating directly observable features and draw a probabilistic conclusion based on elements that either support or detract from the footage plausibility. For obvious reasons, that can be done here, hence the word inference, which stands for making a logical judgment on the basis of circumstantial evidence rather than direct observation. On face value, the whole story seems to be just a big collective bias in wanting to consider the two tiny mummies, especially the first one, as proof of the existence of a mythical race of little people. Science proved that those mummies...
So, the second mummy definitely, in my opinion, looks anencephalic, like to a T. The Pedro, the way that they had him sitting, and some of the way that his skull was crushed, I may have been anencephalic or had some other similar condition. But the second one that they showed definitely looks more, let me go back to it real quick, looks more like it's got the anencephalic condition. Sorry if this is disturbing to anybody just looking at this little mummy, but yeah, I think it says a lot about...
that impedes the head's correct development. If we were to call our hypothesis existence of Nimerigar, the detracting elements would be the DNA results and the morphological exams conducted, in both cases, by a single institution, plus the fact that Pedro's estimated standing height, 14 inches, would be inconsistent with the 2 to 3 feet normally attributed to Nimerigar in Shoshone legends.
There you go.
But that could be explained with Pedro being a short individual, even among his kind. There are quite a few logical inconsistencies, though. In the 18th century, a religious figure trying to convert Native Americans, therefore having no interest whatsoever in validating...
This is like when people talk about the Gospels and they make the argument for embarrassment. These kind of moral testaments that, like, you know, as a testament to the person's character, that they wouldn't behave this way. I've never found that argument convincing in any situation, because, and call me a conspiracy theorist, but if people can, yeah, I do like the heckle fish though. It's kind of funny. But if people can collaborate to present a narrative together, then this all goes out the window about the about that. They're hinging, they're actually absolutely hinging you believing this on the credibility of their position in and in this case, there'd be a conflict of interest. Yeah, Catholic missionaries like, yeah, we can make tons of tourist bucks off of this thing if we say it's a Native American fairy spirit thing or fairy creature. And they're like, yeah, having a Catholic priest say, yeah, it's real would really help sell it. Can we work together and give you a cut? Heck yeah. I want to combine taxidermy and animatronics to really mess with people. Oh my gosh, that sounds horrifying. Do it. I do like taxidermy though. I mostly taxidermy bugs. I got taxidermied wasp. I got a whole bunch of other taxidermies in storage. I'm probably going to get out sometime soon.
Local folklore thought that the Nemerigar were real and knew of a great number of corpses with the exact physical features described in the Shoshone tales dug out in a specific location. In 1876, a newspaper with nationwide distribution and a scientific periodical announced the discovery of another similar cemetery, this time with thousands of corpses no taller than 3 feet each, and all buried in a crossed-leg position.
And then the cemetery disappeared, so it's anecdote. It's not physical evidence. It doesn't add to plot. Anecdote does not add to... If these graveyards are not able to be examined now, then they don't matter. If you can't look at this stuff today and say, is this a inhuman? Are these really a race of tiny people? If if the graveyards have disappeared, if the burial grounds are gone, then they don't count as evidence. Matter of fact, the fact that they disappeared should count as evidence on the implausibility side. That these studied burial grounds suddenly disappeared into the confines of history, or and the mummies disappeared to the confines of history. These are things that should be in the implausibility side, in my opinion.
We could consider those 2 burial grounds just tall tales that even important publications could fall for. But how did they come up with that detail of crossed legs, given that 2 mummies with that specific body disposition were found only in the following century? It could.
But they aren't the only mummies and burials of Native Americans ever found up to this point. These aren't the first. These were not the first. These alleged 1876 burials were not the first Native American burials that were found. All the way into the Great Lakes, it was common to bury people in a cross-legged sitting position. If you buried the mound builders built the mounds around people sitting cross-legged. So that's the common standard for Native American burial, is for them to be sitting cross-legged with a mound of earth built around them. Right? That's the standard. Not something unique that you're going to say, hey, what about this?
It could be argued that yes, maybe those graveyards were discovered, but they contained anencephalic babies. But if we accept this explanation, then we must accept also the numbers that go with it, which would be tens or hundreds for the Ohio burial ground and thousands for the...
So not only did they unearth hundreds, but thousands of individuals that had this condition in this graveyard that then disappeared. But they confirmed that they all had this same condition. They didn't just unearth a couple of maybe children's graves and say, hey, these ones are little. I bet they're all little. Is that the claim? And then the burial grounds again just disappeared into the confines of history, and we'll never know what happened to them.
Tennessee one, which begs the question: how could there be so many babies in the Native American tribes with that congenital anomaly? According to an open access paper on the website of the Reproductive Health Journal, anencephaly has a worldwide incidence of 8.3 per 10,000 births. It has been estimated that the entire native population of the North American continent between the 17th and 18th century was between 7 and 8 millions. Are we to think that such a small population could produce thousands of children with anencephaly? The other discrepancy, in my opinion, is that the Harvard certified tests established in no uncertain terms that Pedro was killed with a blow to the back of the head,
So,
hence the squeezed shape of the head, which is considered.
so we're going to be able to tell the difference between someone who's had a blow to the head and someone who has this anencephaly condition, right? And that's why I'm kind of on the fence about Pedro, because what I understand, the skull was shattered, but I just don't want to pin down a specific condition. But yes, that seems to be the most plausible one. That other one they showed looked a lot like anencephalic condition, though, but the head was in much better shape and much more. The features were much more recognizable. Now, anencephaly can be heritable, so if it's heritable in the Clovis gene line or the Clovis germ line, I mean, it's not. The research on anencephaly being heritable is flimsy. It's like kind of loose, but it is there. There are reports of it running in families. Hey Bree, recovering from sneezing, but also celebrating my 400th episode tonight. Woohoo! High five! Let us know who you got on. You could drop a link too. You got my permission, Van. Delia, yeah, sadly, before modern medicine, many babies didn't make it. Right, there'd be whole infant graveyards for a large community. Most of the graveyards would be infant graveyards, right? Imagine being the doorman at your own funeral. I bet I could make a fortune. You can have a flamethrower for a markup. Oh, are we planning our funerals? I want to be buried under one of those trees. Maybe one of those mushroom caskets. That'd be cool.
Consistent with oral legends that go back hundreds, if not thousands of years. Why would a tribe kill an infant with a blow to the head?
To try to give it a quick death. A blow to the head is generally considered a merciful execution, all things considered. Like a good heavy blow to the head. It's like in the meat packing industry, in the butcher industry, in the factory farming industry. That's still depending on what kind of operation you're in. Like a small butcher shop, they'll still kill cattle with a sledge to the back of the head. You can kill pigs that way too. They do with pigs. They generally do like this bolt gun thing that's also supposed to be more humane, or they have the electric thing that they do now. So the sledge is out of practice, but it was considered humane throughout most of human history, a humane way to put someone down or put something down.
But not least, how could an infant possess pointy canines? Are we to think that it was customary in certain tribes to file and sharpen babies' teeth? To what end?
That's true too, Ember. Texas Chainsaw Massacre does tell you how to do it. And I worked at a butcher shop when I was in high school, only for like 1 week. I worked there through all the meat packing days from Monday through Thursday. Then Friday they called it Slaughter Day. And I won't give away what they did on that day, but I couldn't come back after that. And that wasn't for me. Obviously, being working at a butcher shop, not a Brie kind of thing at all.
The DNA test was performed only on Chiquita, not on Pedro, because DNA testing was introduced only in the 1980s. Is it possible that if little people exist, they are a relatively recent genetic divergence from the
I think
native...
it's kind of funny that you got pointy canines on here, because I got pointy canines. Most humans have a little bit of point to their canines. We are primates. We have pointy canines.
American population, thus increasing the odds of errors by a relatively new technology. As usual, I should remind you that the most glaring difference between academic science and cryptozoology is that the latter accepts eyewitness testimony as enough reason for further investigation, with a foot firmly planted in the idea that we can't simply dismiss every account as lies and every witness as a...
Right, we can't dismiss it, but we can dissect it one piece of evidence at a time, and I think that's what I like to do. So let's go through your list again one more time, Chad. Catholic missionaries with conflict of interest thought they were real. So this is, again, because someone in a position of authority believed that you think that that's carries more weight than just anybody else, than the natives seeing it. Or if someone's from, I don't know, colonizer background, they're more believable than the actual natives. 'Cause I bet if you talk to the natives, they're going to tell you a whole different thing about the Nimerigar. They're going to tell you that they're, maybe more spirit-like entities, I bet. Let's see. 2 and 3 are the same one, right? They're the same answer. Graveyards with remains of tens or hundreds. In 1876, New York Times in the Journal of Anthropology covered burial sites with thousands. So this is mysterious burial grounds that then disappeared from history. So there's no evidence for these things actually existing other than frontier tales that were maybe believed by people writing in the Journal of Anthropology, but no actual evidence of their existence has been confirmed. Cross-legged is a normal way for Native Americans to bury their dead. That's a common way for the mounds to be built. The person sat cross-legged and the mound is built up around them. Anencephaly is low incident, right? And there's only two representatives that we can see that have anencephaly, which is, considering the number of Native Americans over the last 13,000 years. I'm being conservative there and giving you even smaller amount of time. You can go back 23,000 years though, right? There's been, having 2 infants with this condition is not unheard of. A blow to the head. If Pedro was born with this condition, it's very possible that it would be an execution that would be considered the most humane way to put a baby down. All right, pointed canines. We're primates. We all have pointed canines. No DNA test on Pedro because Pedro disappeared. Yeah, so there's not much to be said about that. Early DNA technology. Well, we can always test it again, the one that we do have. Okay, so.
Crazy redneck. I must point out that there are many reports about little people out there. I don't have a piece of footage, or audio, or photos to support this idea, but the combination of logical fallacies illustrated earlier, the extensive folklore, and the significant number of sound-minded individuals reporting encounters with tiny humanoid beings, I consider the existence of a species of proto-pygmies in the North American continent a concrete possibility. Do you agree with this analysis? Is there any specific legend or mystery that you would like me to analyze?
So, essentially, he's given us the composition argument, though. I think that my breakdown there of all his point-by-points was pretty spot on. I think that we can all agree that that's how we should look at this moving forward. Don't vote for Pedro. But he's making a composition argument, which is... I'm used to seeing it in apologetics. That's why it's so easy to recognize from here. But it's just taking a whole bunch of little pieces. Oh, there's folklore and this and the sharp teeth, and it had a funny shaped head, and it was sitting cross-legged, and all these things, and trying to compile them all together into being one weird thing instead of saying, hey, this is a unique individual that was that we should look at their burial in a unique way, and if they had this condition, that's understandable. We've had the experts look at it, and they agreed that it seems to be a human fetus with this condition. So, who are we to dispute that based on folklore alone? I don't think so. But you tell me, do you believe in the Pedro mummy? Do you believe in the little people in Montana? Leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. I was supposed to run a poll. I'm gonna run a poll while I do the intermission, though. Okay, for next week. So give me just a second here to put it together. All right, so So I guess, actually, let me close out the show, and then we'll close out Cryptic Corner, and then I'll do the poll. All right. So, yeah, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And don't forget, if you want to join us live here every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, you can join these fine people over here who are always keeping my my chat lively. Beautiful, beautiful Hive. And you can make your commentary, and I'll read your jokes and stuff while I go through the show. So that's always going to be fun. Yeah. Please remember to be kind, take care, and we will see you next time.